Do we survive economically under
No.
Kamala Harris?
No, not a chance. Not a chance. If she gets elected, that government would probably be shutting me down and a lot of other people who are gold and silver dealers. So we wouldn't get through 4 years without having some sort of a revolution. Civil War, revolution, whatever. We won't get through 4 years.
Buy your precious metals online from SD Bullion. New customers get gold and silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Tim, describe the United States at the end of 2028 under a Kamala Harris administration. Economically, socially, and geopolitically. What are we going to see in 4 years if Kamala Harris is in the White House under those areas?
Well, economically, it would be a complete disaster because they won't restart the distribution system for petroleum, number one. They will not do that. They will gather momentum and strength through every means they possibly can think of. There'd be a lot more globalists running this country than are right now. And believe me, it's substantial. I think the people need to understand that when the Soviet Union collapsed, all these high-ranking communist officials did not go away. In fact, right off in the beginning, they elected or appointed Boris Yeltsin as the premier, president, whatever. And he made a speech right in the beginning addressed to high communist officials saying, don't worry about a thing, we'll take care of you. That's, my interpretation of what he said. So where are those high-ranking communist officials now? They're all bankers. They are, CEOs of corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And if they have retired, their billionaire children are taking their position. That is what has happened to the Soviet Union. Those people are very rich. They're all billionaires. They call themselves oligarchs, or everybody from the outside calls them oligarchs. It's the same in Ukraine. I have a very good customer for years who came here from Ukraine. And I said, so why'd you come here in the first place? He said, well, I'm trying to make enough money to bring my wife and child here. And I said, well, he was working at light assembly in an electronics company, $10 an hour. And I said, so what did you do in Ukraine? He said, I was a lawyer. I said, a lawyer? Why did you have a practice? He said, no. If you were not a communist in Ukraine, you couldn't practice law.
Oh, my word.
Okay? Those people haven't gone away. When we send billions of dollars to Ukraine, the oligarchs come back and carve it up. That's the way it works. It's always been that way in Ukraine. In the Soviet Union, they took care of every single one of these high-ranking communist officials. They're all billionaires. They all attend the World Economic Forum, and they are all contributing to our politics in this country. Period.
Talk to me about inflation under a Kamala Harris administration.
Well, they have never taken any steps to stop it. Okay, but inflation comes from many sources. It comes from too much spending from Congress, that number one. But it also comes from paper trades and digital currencies. Thin air that you convert to money somehow adds to inflation.
Right. And you see that continuing?
I do, and it's worldwide. That's the problem, because as the United States goes, so goes the rest of the world. But it's even if you have a digital currency, there's going to be this massive inflation. It's just you'd be able to hide it with the digital currency.
How about our national debt, our trade deficits, and our federal deficit? So what do you see?
Well, they don't care about having American business, because American business is nothing more than a source of taxation. So are they going to stop companies from moving overseas because they get a better tax rate? They don't know how to do that. They're not very sophisticated. And the oligarchs who come from a foreign country, they're glad to see American companies move overseas because the prize is the dollar. If they collapse the dollar, these billionaires become trillionaires.
What about the welfare state? Where do you see that under Kamala
I
Harris?
think it's a big scam, and it's going to be a much bigger scam. People are going to get used to it. I mean, the women who are collecting welfare benefits and then watching The View all day was where they get their politics. They're going to find out one day that the pie has been cut up and there's no more left.
Do you think modern monetary theory will find its foothold and expand? Do you think we'll see more stimulus checks?
Modern monetary theory, is that the liberal New World Order?
The magic money tree, the print doesn't matter. Give out money. Give out currency.
But
right.
now,
yeah.
that was a vice president of BlackRock who called it that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's basically like, hey, don't worry, this is the new liberal world order. That's a quote from the guy. My estimate is that they have $13 trillion under management. If there's anybody from BlackRock listening, tell me what you think the real number is. I think it's closer to $13 trillion. And they'll say, no, it can't be that high. But they're not. They don't want you to know how high it really is. But if you take that as a measure, that means the top 6 or 8 Wall Street firms probably have more money under management than our entire debt. And you take the money that J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Vanguard they have under management, and add another 1,000 hedge fund companies. That's how bad it is.
Do we survive economically under
No.
Kamala Harris?
No, not a chance. Not a chance. Plus, if she gets wage and price controls, forget about gold and silver.
So the reserve currency status, the last vestiges of that for the United States dollar, is that lost under a Kamala Harris
That's the
administration?
glue that's holding this country together, okay, on the world stage. That is it. And, Trump understands that. That's why he was talking about preserving it. But once it's gone, trade goes with it. And if you don't have to, trade according to the dollar standard, what happens to the dollar? Well, there are trillions of dollars around the world that have come flying back to this country.
All right, I want to shift gears to the geopolitical. It was a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. post that if you want to avoid nuclear war, I strongly urge you to vote for Donald Trump. In fact, I would go so far as to say that a vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for nuclear war.
Yes, that is absolutely true. He does know what he's talking about. There are lots of ways of getting into a nuclear war. Number one, you keep babying Iran, which the Biden administration has done from the very beginning. They're babying them. They're financing all the terrorist activity. That's right. The United States is financing all terrorist activity around the world. And World War III will involve nuclear missiles.
And under a Kamala Harris administration, you see that?
They're too stupid to prevent it. Unfortunately, that's the problem. Biden was too stupid to prevent it. And, here's a guy who doesn't have 3 brain cells to rub together, and he's got the nuclear button in the football in front of him.
Mm-hmm. Trump says he will end the Russian-Ukraine war while he's president-elect.
Yes. He will go to Zelensky and say, you better get your act together because you're not getting any more. Okay? And then he will go sit down with Putin and say, okay, how do we get out of this and save face?
Do you think under a Kamala Harris administration, we will be more involved in foreign wars, having more of our men and women in danger?
We already have soldiers in many places around the world. Syria is a good example of that.
Little Stacks told me a friend of his that was in the military was telling him that there's some of his friends that are afraid of a Kamala Harris administration because they truly believe they will be abandoned. They will be completely forgotten.
Well, they're going to schedule all the drag queen shows and see who doesn't appear, and those people will be abandoned. All the rest of them they'll be going to drag queen shows, so they won't know what hit them.
Let's segue then into the societal changes. What does this society, this culture, this country look like after 4 years of a Kamala Harris administration?
We wouldn't get through 4 years without having some sort of a revolution. civil war, revolution, whatever. We won't get through 4 years. Because things are already very, very bad.
Are you concerned about election night?
Yeah.
The next week?
Yeah. There'd be a lot of changes at the coin and stamp shop if Kamala gets elected. Lots of changes. Yeah, maybe closed for a few days. I'll sweep the place out. I mean, literally, it couldn't be worse news to have somebody like that in the White House. But keep in mind, there's another element of this. Biden was the Chinese bought and paid for president. Okay, he's not useful to the Chinese anymore because he just doesn't have enough brain cells to understand what he's doing from day to day. However, this very surprising pick for vice president by Kamala Harris that a lot of people saying came right from Washington. I'm not sure who that would be. There are several politicians in Washington who do the bidding for China. But this guy has made 30 trips or 28 trips, whatever it is, to China. I've known people who've gone to China once and they'll never go back. He's on their payroll. Okay. Now, they don't have their man in the White House unless Kamala should have a nasty accident. If I were Kamala Harris and I've got that guy, one heartbeat away from the presidency, I would be looking over my shoulder all the time. In fact, she better have some Secret Service tasting her food and sitting in her bedroom at night.
All right, we don't need the feds listening in on this. All right, so we hear a lot about Trump being called an existential threat to democracy. First of all, we're a republic. We're not a pure democracy at all. We have democratic ideals. We're a republic, a representative republic.
Yep.
Do you feel that Kamala Harris is an existential threat to our liberties and the Constitution and our freedoms and our way of life?
She doesn't have the first bit of understanding about our way of life. She does not have an American view. It just doesn't have it. That's why she can't answer questions, because she doesn't know if she should tell the answer to what she actually thinks or if she would be giving away the fact that she hates this country if she gives the wrong answer. No, it's a big problem, big problem.
Because of what could happen with a Kamala Harris administration, is this a time like no other to be stacking physical precious metals?
It definitely is. And I hate the fact that the hedge funds have driven gold up as high as they have.
It's tough.
People definitely need both. You take the money that you don't think you'll ever need to spend, put that into gold. It's just a nice, safe place to put it. And silver will become a barter currency more every day. And just keep in mind that if she gets elected, that government would probably be shutting me down and a lot of other people who are gold and silver dealers. So, they can do anything. Once you give a president wage and price controls, the end game is definitely in sight. And she already talked about that. She talks about equity. Equity is nothing more than taking from people who have and giving to people who don't have, in their opinion.
What would be your final word?
Well, you definitely have to go vote. But also, if you're at the polls and you see something out of the ordinary that doesn't make sense to you, speak up. Go find the supervisor of that voting place and say, why is this happening? And what are these people doing here? Who are all these people standing around the voting machines? Whatever it is that you don't understand, ask. And if you don't get a satisfactory answer, or if you find out that this person you ask, whoever's running the show, is hiding something from you, go find the nearest newspaper or call into a radio show and explain what you saw that didn't make sense. If more people had done that the last two elections, there may have been a better outcome.
One side in this campaign has been telling us that the issues of this election are the maintenance of peace and prosperity. The line has been used, we've never had it so good. But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a third of its national income. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share. And yet our government continues to spend $17 million a day more than the government takes in. We have $15 billion in gold in our treasury. We don't own an ounce. And we've just had announced that the dollar of 1939 will now purchase 45 cents in its total value. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. This was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those Founding Fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant, it's just that they know so much that isn't so. Now it doesn't require expropriation or confiscation of private property or business to impose socialism on a people. What does it mean whether you hold the deed to or the title to your business or property if the government holds the power of life and death over that business or property? And such machinery already exists. The government can find some charge to bring against any concern it chooses to prosecute. Every businessman has his own tale of harassment. Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment. Our Democratic opponents seem unwilling to debate these issues. They want to make you and I believe that we're to choose just between two personalities. Well, what of this man that they would destroy? And in destroying, they would destroy that which he represents, the ideas that you and I hold dear. They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple. That we want our national policy based on what we know in our hearts is morally right. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. You and I have the ability and the dignity and the right to make our own decisions and determine our own destiny. Thank you very much.